Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 to Thrive Live. I'm Karolyn Gazella, and I co-host this show with my good friend, Dr. Lise Alschuler. Happy New Year, everyone. And I have to say, I love learning new things, especially when it comes to cancer care. My guest today is one of my favorite naturopathic oncologists who I like to have on the show frequently because she is always such a wealth of information, and today's show is no different. We will be talking about intratumoral bacteria, potentially a new frontier in cancer treatment. Dr. Tina Kaczor has devoted her professional career to helping people diagnosed with cancer. She is considered a leader in her field and is the author or co-author of several important books and papers on the subject of naturopathic oncology. She is also the co-host of the popular podcast, The Cancer Pod. But before we dig in, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Beginning with Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant, the body's primary defense against free radicals. It also helps support respiratory health. For more information, visit cetriaglutathione.com. Also, Pro Thrivers Wellness Brain, a product specifically for thrivers that contains cognizin for memory, focus, and attention, as well as other brain-supporting nutrients and herbs. You can find Pro Thrivers Wellness Brain online at pureformulas.com. There's also Pro Thrivers Wellness Sleep, which combines higher dose melatonin and other sleep supporting natural ingredients specifically designed for thrivers. You can find Pro Thrivers Wellness Sleep also at pureformulas.com. And Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics. It's a best-selling probiotic for more than 30 years, and it contains 12 probiotic strains that are shelf stable, so no refrigeration is required. Because of a unique 3-year fermentation process, it's a very effective probiotic. Learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. Dr. Kaczor, my friend, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, I always welcome the opportunity to be on your show, so thank you.
Yes. And this is actually a topic that you chose, which I love. So before we dig into the details of our topic today, why did you want to cover this topic?
You know, that's a good question. You know, I've been focusing on cancer care for 25 years, as you well know, and I never stopped thinking about it. And my background is as a molecular biology major, and so I'm always thinking about the ins and outs of the molecular biology of it. And when you asked me, Tina, like, what really is lighting your fire these days? What are you passionate about? I immediately went to this, the presence of bacteria inside tumors. I think it's because it's a topic that isn't discussed much, and it goes up against a dominant paradigm, and that is what we all learned in medical school, which is our organs are sterile, and there's all this sterility in the body, and really the bacteria just stick to your gut, and that's it. And none of that is true. What we learned is wrong. It was an assumption, but it turns out that we just lack the technology to see inside the cells well enough to see what was going on inside them. And there are organisms inside the cancer cell, so intratumoral bacteria. So I want to say this though, people listening might be thinking, who's this woo doc that she's talking to here? And so I just want to say this is no longer woo-woo. And so the moment I think that marked a shift in the scientific validity about these organisms in tumors after about a decade or so of small papers coming out and posters at scientific sessions. And it was super hotly disputed. Everyone's like, oh, that's artifact, that's contamination. There's no such thing. That can't possibly be true. But in 2020, there was an article in the journal Science entitled, "The Human Tumor Microbiome is Composed of Tumor-Type Specific Intracellular Bacteria." That moment, when that got published, and it's got I don't know how many authors, I don't know if it's say 50 plus authors on it. The human tumor microbiome is composed of tumor-type specific intracellular bacteria. That's a mouthful, but what it's basically saying is the bacteria found inside, for example, a breast tumor is distinct and part of a cancer microbiome that is distinct from the normal tissue next to it. So if you looked at the bacteria inhabiting the breast ducts, for example, the tissue in there, you would see normal tissue has one basically ecosystem of microbes, and the cancer has another. And now we're learning that that's true across the board. So, it's kind of like that saying, what's old is new again, because there's been a lot of talking in the alternative circles about this in cancer going back over 100 years. And so I'm also always, learning the fringe of the alternative side. And, there tends to be some vein of truth that runs through, and that's why it lasts 100 years, right? So just figuring out what's the right part of that whatever the alternative theory is. There's always something, some vein of truth that runs through things that last that long.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating, and thank you for bringing it to my attention because I had not heard about this at all. And I did read somewhere that this could be the new frontier in personalized cancer treatment. And when you think about personalized, I mean, if in fact the tumor itself has its own microbiome, I mean, that can be very personalized. So do you agree that this could be a big deal?
I think eventually, yes. But, there's another truism in scientific discoveries and breakthroughs. First, the idea is ridiculed, okay, prior 100 years. Second, it's subject to argument. That's the stage we're in right now. It's still being hotly debated. And then the third phase or stage is widely accepted as true. And we have yet to get there. I think, in my mind, it's not debatable, but I think a lot of people who are ensconced in the old paradigms, there's a reason they buck this, right? They've spent a lifetime with other theories in their mind. And so it's not, is it true? It is true. The science validates that. It's hard to get science to change people's minds. So it will be a very long time before this becomes part of personalized medicine. But that doesn't mean that personalized cancer treatment's not already happening, right? So I mentioned molecular biology. We already use that to personalize cancer treatment, and that's been great, right? So we can look at molecular markers, we can look at genes, we can look at proteins on the cells. We can make it more personalized now than even 5 years ago. I mean, I know AI has a lot of downsides and people have strong opinions about AI, but it will revolutionize our ability to personalize cancer treatment because it's data intense, and that's what AI does well. It crunches data very well. So I think this will be far off. We're talking at least a decade away before this probably gets adopted, I would imagine. But I think that eventually, when stage 3 hits and it becomes obvious and everyone says, well, of course tumors have bacteria in them, then we're going to be talking business, right?
Yeah. So before we talk about how it influences cancer development, progression, and treatment, when I think about cancer and bacteria, I automatically go to the gut microbiome, and I think about, what's going on in the gut. I think about dysbiosis. I think about, balancing the microbiome. I think about probiotics, et cetera, et cetera. So is this the same as addressing bacteria in the gut microbiome? And if it's not, how is it different?
No, it's totally separate. So both exist, right? So it coexists. So if someone has a tumor in their pancreas or their breast or wherever it's happening, the lung, there's an intratumoral bacterial, we'll call it an ecosystem, because it's not one bacteria, it's many. Inside that tumor, it's inside the cancer cells, it can be inside the immune cells. That is separate from what's going on in the gut. And they're two separate and distinct entities that need to be looked at separately. Of course, if someone swallows an antibiotic, you might be affecting both of them. So then it gets more confusing. But yeah, they're both relevant at all times. And so I think we just don't know as much about the intratumoral bacteria as we do about the gut. We know a lot more about the gut.
So how can intratumoral bacteria influence cancer development, progression, and treatment response?
Well, I think the number one thing it does in the realm of progression and of disease is cloak it from the immune system. The bacteria help create that kind of shield that cancer is known for. And basically, cancer can be called a breakdown of the immune system because if the immune system recognized it, you would never know about it, right? You would never become a tumor. It has to not see it for it to grow. That's required. So part of the suppression of the immune system and T suppressor cells in particular, the bacteria can help suppress the immune recognition of the cancer. And then with metastasis, it's a little not as clear what's going on, but we definitely know that the bacteria are hitchhiking a ride to the metastatic sites. That much has been proven. So one of the more famous ones, I guess, or talked about ones, or ones that hit the headlines, was Fusobacterium nucleatum in colorectal cancer. They saw that that same Fusobacterium nucleatum, which is a type of bacteria that predominates in many people's colorectal cancer, is also found within those cancer cells, colorectal cancer cells, when they've traveled to the liver. And so that immune suppression is probably a big part of how it got there, right? Because if those cells traveled through the lymph or through the blood, however they got there, they had to see and not be seen, right? They're going right by immune cells that never recognize them. So I think that's a big part of it. And then the treatment, there is very good evidence to show that I think we have the best evidence for pancreatic cancer. Certain bacteria, in the case of pancreatic cancer, I think it's like 60 to 80% of people with adenocarcinoma of the pancreas, 60 to 80% have predominant gamma proteobacteria. And these gamma proteobacteria produce enzymes that actually can break down drugs commonly used to treat pancreatic cancer. So if they have that bacteria and then they go and get chemotherapy with gemcitabine is what the drug is, or Gemzar is the name brand, because the bacteria chews it up, the bacteria is actually creating a resistance to the drug, right? So what they did in mice is they said, okay, let's see what happens in mice if we give the mice an antibiotic that kills that gamma proteobacteria and then give them Gemzar. Does it work better? And it did. And so this is really interesting, right? So what we're saying in short is the bacteria can actually render the cancer cells resistant to the chemotherapy that's given. In that case, an enzyme that breaks down the chemo, which is mind-blowing to me because I don't know how they had that enzyme on board, but they do. So
yeah, that is fascinating. Honestly, I can't even believe that. What about the flip side? So if a tumor is analyzed and it has beneficial bacteria, is the prognosis going to be better? Or are we just looking at kind of these, I hate to say bad bacteria, but these harmful bacteria that cloak the immune system and make treatments less effective? Are we only looking at that side of the coin right now?
Right now, yes, because we're considering them pathogenic or causative. Maybe we can't prove that. We can't prove cause and effect yet. But we're not saying, so I hear what you're saying, and I think what you're saying kind of transfers over to the gut. So like something
exactly.
like bifidobacterium in the gut can be very helpful because the immune system is better engaged. And translocation of what those good bacteria, another name for them is called commensal organisms in the gut. They do translocate. They actually go through the body into nearby lymph nodes where the cancer is. So the lymph nodes that are working for the cancer, and help the immune system recognize the cancer. And so you're right. Some of those do translocate out of the gut into the body and do work with chemotherapy, specifically, it's been shown, and with immunotherapies. And immunotherapies is where this gets interesting with the gut microbiome. So I hate to cross topics, but I think we do need to touch on the antibiotic role of antibiotics in this whole picture.
Yeah, and before I go to there, because I do have some questions about that, I can see how this would be potentially predictive of metastasis.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you analyze the tumor and you can say, oh, well, there's more risk of spread, so let's treat it this way instead. Am I on the right track?
Yes, yeah, and we might be able to lessen the metastasis if we can keep the bacteria in check. So another thing they did with mice is they showed that for pancreatic cancer specifically, the gamma proteobacteria could be killed with ciprofloxacin, right? So Cipro is what we all know it by. And when they gave them Cipro, it lessened the growth of the tumor. So the antibiotic alone lessened the growth. That's not shocking because there's a whole class of chemotherapeutic agents called antibiotics, right? So this is doxorubicin, adriamycin, it's the whole anthracycline kind of category. So antibiotics are just a hop, skip, and a jump away from being a chemotherapeutic agent. Many chemotherapies are antibiotics. So it crosses over. So it's not shocking, but we think that if we can keep the bacterial growth in check, that we might be able to keep the growth of the actual cancer in check. So I think exploiting that is what we're going to try to do in the future. But we have a long way to go because it really is tip of an iceberg right now that we know.
Right. So does this change how we think about antibiotics in cancer care?
Right.
I'm not sure if, can you hear me, Dr. Kaczor?
Oh, yeah, I lost you there.
Oh, okay.
Does this change?
Yeah, does this change how we think about antibiotics in cancer care?
Yes, I think it does. So that's where the hard line needs to be made between the gut's microbiome and the intratumoral bacteria, right? So we have two bacterial environments to consider when someone's taking an oral antibiotic, right? So from back when I think about this, I'm trying to put it in a simplified term. We have studies. Let's just go straight to what we do know before I tell you what we are actively studying. We have studies that show that antibiotics work against checkpoint inhibitor treatments. So this is something I want to put out there because I know it's a lot of technical stuff we're talking about today, but I just want to say one thing, and that's very clear. Anyone who's going to get a checkpoint inhibitor for their cancer treatment would do best avoiding antibiotic use, oral antibiotics, in the prior 2 months before treatment and at the very start of that treatment. And I say that strong, and I know that that's kind of controversial because antibiotics also save lives. If you're going to have an infection that you have to take an antibiotic for, you take the antibiotic and then you hope you can put off your checkpoint inhibitor treatment. Checkpoint inhibitors are drugs that basically take the brakes off of your immune system and allow your immune system to attack the cancer. That's what these checkpoint inhibitor drugs do. They're not chemo. They don't kill the cancer cells. They're not toxic in that sense. They are immune drugs. And so we have right now at least 6 reviews, meta-analyses. 70,000 individuals have been studied throughout all of those. All of the data only goes in one direction with checkpoint inhibitor drugs, and that is antibiotic usage just before or at the start of treatment is associated with worse outcomes, as in, 45 to 93% increased risk of death, 53 to 90% increased risk of disease progression. There's lower response rate. There's higher progressive disease rates. It's a slam dunk, the data in that one.
Okay.
When it comes to chemo, it's much more muddy, and there's too much to really even digest. It does look like if someone's getting chemotherapy, antibiotics are often associated with better outcomes. So that probably has to do with the fact that chemotherapy is so immune suppressive that these antibiotics are saving lives by keeping people out of the hospital, keeping them from getting, serious infections and such. So you do have to look at which tumor, which treatment, which antibiotic. So it gets a little muddier, but the checkpoint inhibitors there's no discussion really.
Got it. I mean, and certainly this lends itself to a more personalized treatment approach. When we're looking at people diagnosed with cancer, what does this mean for people diagnosed with cancer, like right now?
I think it means that you have to look at, I can't say that you can get your intratumoral bacteria tested. That is not going to happen. There is no service doing that. You'd have to find a clinical trial that is just kind of doing that because we need to know more information before we move forward. I would say, if it were my patient, I would definitely be looking to see if it was pancreatic adenocarcinoma. We happen to know that one really well, 60 to 80%. I would consider doing an antibiotic if someone's getting that drug, gemcitabine, for pancreatic cancer, because the downside risk of the antibiotic is very well defined, and we know antibiotics very well. I think the outcome data this year for pancreatic cancer specifically, there was a look-back study, a retrospective, and in that study, they took SEER data, which is epidemiological data in the United States, and Medicare data, and they showed that people with pancreatic cancer who got an antibiotic early, within a month of starting their chemotherapy for that pancreatic cancer, they had better outcomes, as in they lived longer, they had less progressive disease, they had less death due to pancreatic cancer. So it was pretty strong. You know, as a look back, it was like a retrospective review of information, but it's still very convincing and enough to me that I would say, okay, go on an antibiotic. But that's one case. So you have to look at each person's case, and so the type of cancer and the treatment they're going to get. And that would probably dictate where I would go from there as far as antibiotics go.
Mm-hmm.
You can never go wrong, keeping the microbiome of the gut as diverse and healthy as possible. So you can always say, eat well, eat a variety of vegetables and fruits, like eat colorful polyphenols, all that good stuff, because that creates the diversity in the gut, which optimizes immune function regardless of treatment that you get.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some people who think it's blasphemy to be pushing antibiotics. I mean, do you get
Yeah.
that, or I mean, is
Oh,
that
yeah. Yes. Well, and I got to tell you, it's hard to, swim the currents in the middle. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I'm neither alternative nor fully conventional. I have my foot on both sides of it. So, and I have for 25 years. And so if you just look at the data, it's often inconveniently muddy. It's not usually kind of, I gave you a strong opinion about checkpoint inhibitor drugs, but generally speaking, it's seldom that clear. So it's usually case by case, nuanced information, contextual, but that's the nature of personalized care. And you have to follow the data wherever it goes and let your previous assumptions and all of your biases, you have to put them aside and just look at the data and say, okay, I mean, and it always boils down to what would you do for a loved one, right?
Yes.
Like, what would I do? I would do whatever I think is best for them. And if the response rate when you take an antibiotic is better than when you don't, well, take an antibiotic,
Yeah.
right?
It,
To me,
yeah,
it's simple.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. What would you like to see happen in the future when it comes to research and just really tapping into the potential of this new frontier? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see more and more studies like the pancreatic cancer one, where we're looking at breast cancer and we're looking at colorectal cancer, and we can do those retrospective chart reviews. That SEER and Medicare review could be done for every cancer. I do think bioinformatics is a really useful tool. AI, bioinformatics, we're mining the data of what has already happened in the real world. There's plenty of it. I know it's only as good as the inputted, if it was input properly, but it gives us a starting point so that we can turn around, and now we're going to go forward. Somebody out there is going to create a research study that's going to blind, do a placebo against an antibiotic while people are getting treatment. Ideally, that's what I would like to see. I'd like to just to take the information that's already available, crunch it all, come out with better treatment outcomes. I mean, we're talking about people's longevity. I mean, this is not, speculative. It's already in people's computers. It's on hard drives or in the sky or wherever we put it in the cloud.
Yeah, yeah.
The data's there. We just have to mine it and walk away with it. And I know they're talking about engineering certain bacteria. They might use bacteriophages, which are viruses that attack bacteria to go after these things. But bacteriophages don't pierce a human cell bilipid layer. So I speculate, my personal speculation is that the bacteria are already hiding from their nemesis in the world, which is bacteriophages, by going inside the cell in the first place. I mean, that could be one of the reasons they're there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you originally said that we're about a decade away, and I got to tell you, I'm a little bummed by that.
Yeah. Maybe
but
AI will speed that up.
that's what I was just going to ask you that. Like, could that be the case where this is a really good use of AI and it does speed this up to make sure that this happens sooner rather than later?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because like you and I can't mine a million data points, but AI can. And
Yeah.
they can do it in minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a crazy amount of bioinformatic capability we have at our fingertips right now. I mean, even us lay people, just sitting at our computer. I mean, it's kind of crazy what we can find now and do with AI. So,
Yeah.
I think that it can be done. I think it will be done. We have to have the will, and so the problem in science is nothing really happens till the giant research light gets shown on that topic. And when I say giant research light, I mean dollars. I mean
Mm-hmm.
the money, right? The research doesn't happen without the money. And so whoever's at the, holds the pocket strings basically dictates what direction we go in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been unfortunately we've spent a lot of time, a lot of decades, and a lot of expense on the somatic mutation theory, which is this whole idea that the gene itself is that inside the nucleus is responsible for cancer. And a lot of us, me included, think that that's just the tail wagging the dog. I don't think that nuclear DNA is at the heart of it. Not saying that it's not contributory. It is. But it's not the cause. Maybe some hereditary cancers, right? Like you have BRCA genes and that, highly penetrant hereditary cancers, yes, more so than sporadic. But 90% of cancers are what are called sporadic. They're not really a hereditary genetic
Right.
disposition.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean it's fascinating stuff. Let's try to stay on top of this research and see where it takes us. Where can people find out more about you? Do you have a website you'd like to share? And how can they listen to your podcast, The Cancer Pod?
Well, I don't do a whole lot of social media. I'm on LinkedIn, so people reach out there and I'll happily connect with folks who are like-minded. The podcast is called The Cancer Pod, and you can find that anywhere you're listening. Oh, well, wherever you're listening now, I suppose you can find it. Just type in The Cancer Pod in the search area, and we're easy to find. We also have a website, same name, thecancerpod.com. And there's a membership for our listeners who would like to join us and get to know us a little bit and join our community. And there's blogs and recipes. And and if there's a topic you want to know about, we've done over 110 episodes now. You can just put it in the episode search bar and it'll come up. If we've talked about it, it'll come up. Hot flashes, mucositis, name it. I mean, constipation, diarrhea.
Yeah.
So we have a bookshop link as well. So some books that people might find helpful. And our whole purpose for being at the Cancer Pod is just to help people. I just figured we could reach a lot more people than I could one-on-one in my office. And so my friend Leah Sherman and I created this 5 years ago, and it's a passion project for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. I highly recommend it. The Cancer Pod. Look it up on your favorite podcast outlet or else go to thecancerpod.com. Well, Dr. Kaczor, this has been fascinating. I learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks again for having me. I always enjoy it. I'll come back anytime.
Oh, good, because you might regret that. But I'm going to reach out to you. So, okay. Well,
Sounds good.
this has been great. Thank you so much. So that wraps up this episode of 5 to Thrive Live. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, ProThrivers Wellness Sleep Formula, ProThrivers Wellness Brain Formula, Cetria Glutathione, the superior glutathione to support liver and immune health, and Dr. Ohhira's award-winning shelf-stable probiotic. Thanks for listening. And remember, you can find past shows at ithriveplan.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. May you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a great night.